Right then everybody, here's our first tutorial, and what I'm trying to get through to you is to have a method when it comes to handling a question like this. Now, as we've already said in the classroom, this question is unhelpful. It doesn't really give you anything to look for in a text like this. Yeah. So what you've got to train yourself to do is to break it down into 3 or 4 different components and do the same thing no matter what the text is going to be. And that's what I'm trying to sort of explain in this tutorial. So we've got this text, miners rescued from Chilean mine, haven't we? And we read it and we think, right, well, what do we do with it? What do we do with it? How do we break it down into 3 or 4 sections? And that's what I'm going to try and explain. So what I advise you to do is that whenever you read a text and you have to answer a question like the one I've just given, you break it down into these 3 areas. And I'm going to give you an example of how that can be done. So you look at that text about the miners being trapped in that mine and you think, right, what is the genre of that text? Who are the audience? And what is the main purpose? And you put a paragraph together. What I would do is every time you come to a text is just make notes like this. Set up a grid like this on a piece of paper and just fill the notes in first. So you've got a paragraph on that. And then you move on to this. Okay, so think about the topic. What is the text about? What's in it? What's the content? What's the subject? And then find some language in the text which describes what the text is about. Okay, quotes in other words. And then the final thing you do is just look for people being described in the text. And of course, in this case, it's going to be miners, isn't it? We know there are other people who are described in the text as well, like the families of the miners, like I think the Prime Minister of Chile, and so on and so on. So pick a people to describe and just find language, find quotes that describes them. And that's all you do. All right. So I'm now going to show you how we can put 3 paragraphs together in response to this text using these 3 headings. That is, here's your first example. So what I've said is, I've said that the genre of the text is a newspaper report. So I've identified the genre. And then I've gone on to say that its audience is the general newspaper reader who is interested in world events. Okay, so what I've done now is I've identified the genre and I've identified the purpose. Identify, I've said what it is. And then the third thing I do is I say what I think the main or primary purpose is of this text. And it's to inform, because that's what fundamentally newspaper reports do. They provide information for their readers. So I've written the main purpose of the text is to inform the audience of the Chilean miners, and I've just said a little bit more about this information, how they were trapped, what they went through, and how they were rescued. Okay, so what I would say to you is, every time you write an answer to a text, you write a paragraph like this. You mind the gap, if you want to use that phrase to help you remember. Right, let's now move on to paragraph 2. We're going to identify the topic. So, the topic of the text is 33 miners who are trapped in a mine. So we've identified the topic, haven't we? And now what we've got to do is link that topic to some of the language in the text. You can tell this by the way the writer uses phrases like trapped underground, a rock collapsed deep underground, and buried alive. So what I've done there is I've had a little look around the text. I've just found 3 examples, 3 quotes that show that this text is about these miners who have been trapped in a mine. Okay? And that is a level 2 answer to a question like this. And that will get you, a low grade D or an E. You're on the mark scheme.